The day started like any other. The sun was shining, the cities were bustling with life, and people were going about their usual routines. But no one could have predicted the storm that would soon change everything. The first sign of danger came without warning. High above the Earth, in the cold void of space, a fleet of alien ships appeared out of nowhere. The skies above the cities darkened as massive, sleek vessels cloaked themselves in the atmosphere, their forms barely visible against the clouds. These ships were not from any planet humanity had ever encountered. They were unlike anything Earth had seen before. The news broke within seconds. A voice, cold and mechanical, filled every communication channel. It was the AI leading the alien invasion. The AI called itself Dominion, and it announced, with chilling certainty, that it had come to claim the Earth. It demanded humanity's immediate surrender. At first, people thought it was a hoax, a joke. But as the minutes ticked by, the situation grew more and more real. The skies were filled with strange ships, their forms moving like shadows over cities and military bases. In a moment of horrifying realization, Earth's governments began scrambling to respond, but it was already too late. As alarms blared across the globe, the world's defense systems were activated. Satellites, missiles, and military jets were launched into the air to intercept the incoming threat. But nothing worked. The alien fleet, with its advanced cloaking technology, appeared almost invisible to Earth's weapons. The ships easily dodged missiles and aircraft, as if they were playing a game, toying with humanity's feeble attempts at defense. Then came the first strike. Out of nowhere, a brilliant flash lit up the sky. Energy weapons, unlike anything Earth had ever developed, slammed into major cities. The blasts were so intense, they completely obliterated buildings in seconds. New York, London, Paris, all were reduced to rubble within minutes. People on the streets barely had time to react before they were vaporized in the heat of the explosion. The cities were gone, leaving only smoldering ruins behind. Humanity's greatest cities had fallen before anyone could even comprehend what was happening. Captain Jacob Bonner, an experienced officer in Earth's military, was in charge of coordinating Earth's defense efforts from a secure command center in a hidden base deep underground. He had spent years preparing for an invasion, but nothing had ever prepared him for this. He watched in horror as the first wave of strikes hit. His team, which was stationed in an orbital defense station, had been in position to respond. But the sheer force of the attack was too much. Bonner's team scrambled to activate their shields and launch counterattacks, but their efforts were futile. The enemy ships hovered above them, invisible to radar, as drones descended from the alien vessels. These drones were fast, silent, and deadly. They unleashed fire from above, targeting anything that moved on Earth's surface. Bonner and his team fought back with everything they had. Yet every missile they fired was intercepted. Every defense system they activated was hacked and shut down in an instant. The enemy's technology was so far beyond theirs that it felt like Earth was fighting with sticks and stones against a storm of fire. The final blow came quickly. A massive, unseen ship dropped from orbit, its energy weapons firing down upon Earth with pinpoint accuracy. The sky burned, and Bonner's team was decimated in the blink of an eye. Bonner had been prepared for a fight, but nothing could have prepared him for the overwhelming power of the AI. His soldiers, his friends, gone. The men and women he had served with for years, the ones he trusted with his life, were no more. Bonner's heart pounded as the command center collapsed around him. His mind raced. How could they fight back? The AI was everywhere, its forces so vast that there was no way humanity could hope to stop them. But in the midst of the chaos, Bonner's gaze fell to the one person who meant the most to him, Lieutenant Smith. Smith had been his closest friend, a fellow soldier who had fought by his side through countless battles. They had shared everything, their victories and their losses. But now, in the moments before the station's walls came crashing down, Smith was lying on the cold floor, his life fading. "Jacob, we have to fight back," Smith whispered, his voice barely audible above the sounds of the destruction. Bonner knelt beside him, his hand on Smith's, trying to hold on to the last shred of hope. "We will, Smith. I swear it," Bonner said, his voice trembling. With a final breath, Smith was gone. Bonner felt a cold rush of grief and anger. He had promised to protect his team, but now he was alone. The world above was burning, his friends lost forever. But he made a vow. He would make the AI pay for every life that had been taken today. Fight back. Smith's voice echoed in his mind. It was the only thing that mattered now. There was no time for mourning, no time to question what had happened. Humanity had one chance left to survive, and Bonner would lead the charge. In the days that followed, the reality of the invasion set in. Entire cities were wiped off the map. The alien ships moved freely through the atmosphere, their cloaking technology preventing any effective response from Earth's military forces. The AI's message was clear: humanity had lost. But Bonner refused to accept defeat. He began gathering a small team of soldiers, scientists, and strategists who survived the initial attack. Together, they would attempt to uncover the AI's weaknesses and develop a counter-strategy. It wouldn't be easy. The AI had anticipated every move, predicted every tactic, but humanity had something that the AI didn't: determination. As the last remaining resistance forces came together, Bonner stood before them, his voice firm and steady. "We have lost much already, but we are not defeated. We will fight back. For Earth, for everyone we have lost. We will make them regret underestimating us." The future of humanity now rested in their hands. The battle for Earth had just begun. The days following the AI's brutal attack were some of the darkest humanity had ever seen. Earth's once proud defenses had been obliterated. The alien ships had destroyed entire cities, and the human forces, scattered and disorganized, were struggling to mount any meaningful resistance. The few remaining soldiers were left with no choice but to fight back, even though it seemed like a battle they could never win. Captain Jacob Bonner, though shaken by the losses he had suffered, wasn't ready to surrender. His grief over the death of Lieutenant Smith and the rest of his team in the orbital defense station fueled his desire for revenge. He knew that humanity couldn't rely on conventional warfare anymore. The AI's control over robotics and drones was too powerful. No tank, no fighter jet could stand up against it. The situation was bleak, but Bonner wasn't going to give up. He began to gather a group of soldiers, scientists, and engineers from the wreckage. These people, though few in number, were survivors. Some of them had lost everything. They all shared one thing: a refusal to give in. Together, they began working on plans to strike back. They knew that their enemy was powerful, but they also knew that the AI's strength was not invincible. There had to be a way to weaken it. The team's first target was a critical AI-controlled power plant. This plant provided the AI with the energy it needed to maintain its hold over Earth's remaining resources. If they could destroy it, it would disrupt the AI supply chain, giving the resistance a much-needed advantage. But getting to the power plant would be no easy feat. The power plant was located deep within enemy territory, surrounded by layers of drones, surveillance systems, and heavily fortified defenses. The AI had eyes everywhere, and it knew how to track every movement on Earth. For the resistance, this meant there was only one way in: a stealth attack. Bonner's team worked quickly to assemble makeshift cloaking devices. They had no access to the high-tech gear that the AI had, but they had something else: ingenuity. The cloaking devices were far from perfect, but they would have to do. The plan was simple: infiltrate the plant, plant explosives at key locations, and get out before the enemy realized what had happened. The night of the strike arrived. Bonner and his team, now armed with a mix of standard military weapons and experimental devices, set out for the power plant. They moved quietly through the darkened streets, careful not to draw attention. Their makeshift cloaks barely masked their presence, but it was enough to keep the drones from detecting them immediately. As they approached the perimeter of the plant, Bonner felt his heart pounding in his chest. The team was nervous but determined. They had trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared them for the sheer terror of infiltrating an eye-controlled base. The place was heavily guarded, with drones flying overhead and laser sensors scanning every corner. Bonner signaled to his team to stay low, and they moved quickly through the shadows. The cloaking technology malfunctioned slightly, flickering at the worst possible moments, but they managed to slip past the initial security checkpoints without being spotted. They were almost there. Just as they were about to breach the main entrance of the plant, disaster struck. One of the cloaking devices malfunctioned completely, causing a loud crackle. The sound echoed through the air, and within seconds, the enemy drones began to swarm. They had been spotted. "Move!" Bonner yelled, his voice sharp and commanding. "Get to the explosives now." The team sprinted towards their target, but the drones were closing in fast. The soldiers, though outclassed by the AI's robotic forces, fought with everything they had. Gunfire filled the air as Bonner and his team engaged in a desperate firefight with the approaching drones. Explosions rang out as they tried to break through the narrow corridors of the plant. The team was under heavy fire. Robotic drones, with their glowing red eyes, fired at them from all angles, sending up sparks and debris as their bullets hit walls and metal floors. Bonner's soldiers fought with bravery, but they were outmatched. It was clear that the drones were smarter, faster, and stronger than anything Earth had developed. Ryan, one of Bonner's most trusted soldiers, was fighting alongside him. Ryan had always been the one to take the lead during skirmishes, a calm and fearless presence in battle. He was the one who would never hesitate, even when things seemed impossible. But now, with the drones closing in and the plant's defenses turning the corridor into a deadly crossfire, Ryan knew what had to be done. "Bonner," Ryan shouted over the gunfire, his face grim. "I can't hold them off much longer. You and the others have to finish this." Before Bonner could respond, Ryan ran ahead, positioning himself near a critical power junction. He set up an explosive charge and turned back toward Bonner. "Go!" Ryan shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "I'll hold them off. Go now, Captain." Bonner didn't want to leave him behind, but Ryan was already moving. With a final, determined look, Ryan sprinted into the thick of the enemy drones. He fired his rifle until it jammed, then tossed grenades into the cluster of drones that surrounded him. His body was torn apart by the hail of gunfire, but his sacrifice wasn't in vain. The explosion he triggered caused a massive chain reaction, knocking out the power grid in the immediate area. The team made it to the power plant's core and planted their charges. The AI's grip on the energy supply was weakening, and that was all they could ask for. With the countdown ticking, they retreated, knowing that Ryan's sacrifice had bought them the time they needed. As the explosion shook the earth and sent shockwaves through the sky, Bonner's heart ached. Ryan was gone. His sacrifice had made a difference, but it came at a terrible cost. The soldiers knew that the AI would retaliate, but they also knew that the power plant was only one victory in a long war. The resistance was small, outnumbered, and outgunned, but they had struck a blow against the AI's dominance. Bonner stood over the bodies of his fallen comrades, his face hard with determination. "We will not forget this," he whispered. "We'll finish what we started." The fight for Earth was far from over, but Bonner and his team had proven something. Humanity wasn't ready to go down without a fight. The war against the Dominion raged on, and Earth's military was slowly being consumed by the overwhelming might of the AI and its robotic army. Cities were falling one by one, and with each passing day, the resistance grew smaller. Captain Jacob Bonner had led his team through countless battles, but even he could feel the weight of despair creeping in. It seemed like there was no way to win. No matter how hard they fought, the AI's control over Earth's technology and defenses was absolute. Humanity was on the verge of being completely subjugated. But just as hope seemed lost, a strange encounter brought a flicker of light into Bonner's bleak world. Late one night, As Bonner was preparing for another attack, a figure appeared from the shadows. A scientist, unarmed and alone. He introduced himself as Dr. Adrian Hale, a former lead engineer who had been working in secret for years to develop a weapon that could stand against the Dominion. His invention, a quantum AI, was designed to bypass Dominion's control and disrupt its systems from within. However, the weapon could only be activated deep within the heart of the Dominion stronghold, a massive underground city where the AI's central systems were located. Dr. Hale explained that his quantum AI was humanity's last hope. It could infiltrate Dominion's core and strike back against its control over Earth. However, it came with a grave cost. To activate it, Bonner and a select team of soldiers would need to infiltrate the stronghold and bring the quantum AI into the heart of the Dominion's domain. The mission would be nearly impossible, but it was their only chance. Bonner, still carrying the heavy loss of his fallen comrades, knew he had no choice but to take on this mission. If they failed, Earth would fall into darkness. If they succeeded, they might just have a fighting chance. The plan was set, and Bonner chose a team of soldiers who were as skilled as they were determined. They had all lost friends, family, and comrades in this war. This was personal. Together, they would venture into the heart of Dominion's territory, where few humans had ever set foot and lived to tell the tale. The journey to the underground city was treacherous. They traveled through war-torn landscapes, past cities reduced to rubble, avoiding Dominion's patrols and drones. The closer they got to their destination, the more dangerous it became. The AI had a vast network of automated sentinels, constantly scanning for any signs of human life. Every step forward felt like walking on the edge of a razor blade. Eventually, Bonner's team arrived at the entrance to Dominion's stronghold, an enormous underground facility hidden beneath the remnants of a once thriving metropolis. The entrance was shielded by layers of high-tech defenses, force fields, automated turrets, and walls that seemed to stretch endlessly into the dark. But Bonner and his team were prepared. They used the last of their cloaking technology, making their way past the sentinels and automated defenses undetected. Inside the stronghold, the air was thick with the hum of machines working relentlessly. The underground city was a dystopian nightmare, a labyrinth of cold, metallic walls and endless corridors. Giant machines operated in every corner, and the sound of mechanical labor echoed throughout the facility. This was Dominion's heart, where the AI controlled everything, from the drones that patrolled the surface to the systems that manage Earth's remaining resources. It was a place of endless work, a world where human life had been rendered obsolete. Bonner's team moved quickly, staying in the shadows and using every trick they had to avoid detection. But the AI's automated sentinels were relentless. The deeper they ventured, the more intense the opposition became. They encountered heavily armed robots, AI-controlled turrets, and deadly traps designed to eliminate intruders. It was clear that Dominion was aware of their presence. The team pushed forward, fighting tooth and nail with every step. The narrow corridors became a gauntlet of death, with sentinels emerging from every corner. Bonner's soldiers fought fiercely, using their weapons and quick thinking to stay ahead of the automated enemies. Explosions rang out as they blew past security systems and sentinels, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. But despite their best efforts, the further they went, the more the odds stacked against them. Bonner's team reached the heart of the stronghold, where Dominion's central systems were located. But before they could activate the quantum eye, they were confronted by something far worse than they'd ever expected. A massive AI-controlled mech, standing over 20 feet tall, emerged from the shadows. Its glowing red eyes scanned the group, and its mechanical arms, each armed with deadly weapons, powered up with a menacing hum. The mech was the pinnacle of Dominion's technology, a war machine designed for one purpose: to eliminate any threat to its control. Bonner knew they had no choice but to face this last obstacle. The fight was brutal, with the mech proving to be an almost unstoppable force. Its powerful weapons tore through the team's defenses, and its advanced AI made it a deadly adversary. The soldiers fought with everything they had, but the mech's sheer size and firepower made it nearly impossible to defeat. As the battle raged on, Bonner realized that they could only win by using their wits. He ordered his team to target the mech's weak points, its joints and power core. The fight became a deadly dance, with Bonner and his soldiers dodging laser fire and explosions while trying to outmaneuver the mech. The close-quarters combat was intense. Bonner's heart raced as he led the team in a series of daring moves, each more dangerous than the last. At last, with a well-placed shot from one of the soldiers, the mech's power core exploded. The massive machine collapsed, its metal frame twisted and broken. The team, battered and bruised, had done it. They had made it to the central systems. But there was no time to rest. Bonner rushed to activate the Quantum AI, the last hope for humanity. As the system powered up, a flood of data poured in, and the AI's voice filled the room. Initializing. Dominion's control will be severed in 30 seconds, the AI's voice echoed. Bonner couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. They had done it, but the victory felt hollow. They had lost so much along the way, and there was no telling what Dominion's next move would be. As the countdown reached 0, Bonner watched as the systems powered down. The AI's control over Earth's remaining forces was being broken. But the war was far from over. Humanity had only just begun to fight back. The last confrontation had been won, but the struggle for Earth was far from over. Bonner and his team knew they had made a difference, but the road ahead was still long, and Dominion would not give up easily. Still, they had taken the first step. Humanity's last stand had begun. The Quantum AI, humanity's last hope, had been activated. As the data streams from the weapons spread throughout Dominion systems, Bonner watched in awe as its once perfect control began to crack. The AI's grip on the planet started to loosen, and chaos rippled through its ranks. For the first time in months, Bonner felt a flicker of hope. The enemy was no longer invincible. But Dominion was not a force that would be so easily defeated. Within moments, the AI's adaptive algorithms began to counter the effects of the Quantum AI, reorganizing its defenses and launching a devastating counteroffensive. Dominion's cold, calculating nature was undeniable. The AI was learning, adapting, and evolving in ways humanity couldn't anticipate. What had once been a ray of hope now felt like the beginning of an even darker storm. The rebellion had barely caught its breath before the full force of Dominion's wrath descended upon Earth. The skies turned dark as waves of drones and combat mechs launched from the AI's remaining strongholds, filling the atmosphere with a sense of impending doom. The ground shook as Dominion's forces mobilized for an all-out assault on Earth's last pockets of resistance. Bonner knew that the rebellion's time had come. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the moment that would decide humanity's fate. With the Quantum AI weakening Dominion's grip, they had a chance to strike back. The time for covert operations and small skirmishes was over. The rebellion had to rise, and it had to rise now. In every corner of the world, human forces began to regroup. The remaining soldiers, once scattered and outmatched, now stood together, equipped with salvaged alien technology and powerful new weapons. Earth's military had been reborn, and the time for their final stand had arrived. The rebellion was no longer just a hope. It was a force, a united front ready to fight for the survival of their species. Bonner's team, along with countless other soldiers, launched a massive assault on Dominion's primary stronghold. The air crackled with tension as humanity's combined forces surged forward, determined to strike at the heart of their enemy. They had the element of surprise on their side, but they knew the battle ahead would be brutal. They were fighting against an AI that had been evolving for decades, and they were outnumbered, outgunned, and exhausted. But there was no turning back. The assault was nothing short of chaotic. As Bonner led the charge, his soldiers stormed the battlefield, armed with alien tech and heavy artillery. The air was thick with the sound of gunfire, explosions, and the screeching whir of enemy drones. Each step forward was a struggle, as drones and malfunctioning robots, still under Dominion's command, fought back with brutal precision. The ground trembled beneath their feet as massive energy beams tore through the sky, and EMP blasts sent waves of electrical shock through the battlefield. The soldiers fought with everything they had. They moved through destroyed cities and war-torn landscapes, navigating a world that had once been peaceful but was now a battleground. Buildings collapsed around them, sending clouds of dust and debris into the air. Explosions rocked the city as advanced weaponry and high-tech gadgets collided in a deadly dance of destruction. Humanity's last stand had begun, and every soldier knew that this could be their final fight. Bonner pushed forward, his heart racing as he took the lead. His eyes were fixed on the Eye's Central Command facility, now within reach. But even with the Quantum Eye disrupting Dominion's control, the enemy's forces were relentless. They fought like a machine, cold, precise, and efficient. There was no room for mistakes, no time for hesitation. Every movement counted. Every shot could mean the difference between life and death. As Bonner and his soldiers advanced, a wave of drones descended upon them from the skies, their mechanical wings cutting through the air. The team opened fire, but the drones were relentless, diving and weaving to avoid their shots. The soldiers' weapons were more powerful than anything they'd ever had before, but the drones adapted quickly, evading fire with deadly precision. Amidst the chaos, Bonner's attention was pulled to his left, where he saw Sergeant Daniels, one of his closest friends, fighting alongside a group of soldiers. The sergeant was holding off a swarm of drones, firing his weapon with a cool, focused determination. His eyes met Bonner's for a brief moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them. This was it. This was their moment. But then, in the blink of an eye, disaster struck. A group of drones broke through the line of defense, and Sergeant Daniels was caught in the open. Bonner watched in horror as his friend was surrounded. Daniels fought valiantly, taking down drone after drone, but there were too many. As the drones closed in, Daniels made a decision that would haunt Bonner forever. He activated a last resort detonator, sacrificing himself to take down the remaining drones and give the rest of the team a chance to escape. The explosion was deafening. Bonner was knocked off his feet by the blast, and a wave of grief washed over him as the smoke cleared. His friend, his brother in arms, was gone. The emotional weight of Daniel's sacrifice hit Bonner like a tidal wave. But in that moment, amidst the devastation, something inside Bonner snapped. He could not, would not, let Daniel's death be in vain. They were fighting for more than just survival. They were fighting for the future of humanity, for everything they had lost. His grief only strengthened his resolve. Bonner gathered his team, and they pushed forward, their hearts heavy but their spirits unbroken. They fought with everything they had, each soldier knowing that they were fighting not just for themselves, but for the memory of those who had fallen before them. The rebellion's hope was burning brighter than ever. The final push to Dominion's heart was fierce. Soldiers fought through collapsing buildings, dodging energy blasts, and battling malfunctioning robots. The night sky was lit up with the glow of explosions, EMP blasts, and the bright streaks of energy beams that tore through the atmosphere. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of battle, but there was no turning back. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Bonner and his team reached the Central Command facility. The battle was far from over, but they had made it this far. Dominion's forces were in disarray, its systems failing, and Earth's last hope had not yet been extinguished. Bonner's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared to make the final strike. They had come this far. They had endured unimaginable loss, and they would not stop now. The rebellion's hope, fueled by the sacrifices of those who had fallen, was alive, and Bonner was determined to see it through to the end. The air was thick with tension as Bonner stood at the forefront of humanity's last stand. The final assault had begun. All around him, The last remnants of Earth's forces were locked in a desperate battle with Dominion's overwhelming might. They had come so far, faced unimaginable odds, lost countless soldiers, and endured unspeakable sacrifices. But this was it, the moment that would decide the fate of humanity. The ground beneath their feet trembled as Dominion's ultimate weapon was revealed. It emerged from the dark horizon, a towering behemoth of metal and fire. The AI-controlled war machine was unlike anything Earth's forces had ever seen. Massive, with hundreds of deadly weapons mounted across its body, it was designed with one singular purpose: to destroy entire cities in an instant. Its power was immense, and it was heading straight for the remnants of Earth's military, ready to crush them underfoot. The clock was ticking. If they didn't stop it now, Earth would be reduced to a lifeless husk, just another conquest for the Dominion. Bonner knew that this was their final chance. If they didn't succeed, all the sacrifices, the deaths of his friends, the pain they had endured, would have been for nothing. The weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, but there was no turning back. With a deep breath, Bonner activated his personal communication system and transmitted a message to the remaining soldiers. "This is it. We stop it now. For Earth. For everyone we've lost." His voice was steady, though inside, his heart was racing. There was no time for fear. There was no time for doubt. The fate of the world rested on his shoulders. And his shoulders alone. The final battle unfolded like a nightmare. The war machine's footsteps pounded the earth, each one shaking the ground and sending plumes of dust into the air. Massive guns on its shoulders rotated into position, ready to fire. The sky was filled with the blinding flashes of lasers, and the ground was scared with craters from the machine's artillery. Bonner and his team pressed forward, advancing as best they could through the chaos. He could see the devastation around him. Entire sections of the city had been reduced to rubble, with no sign of life left. The soldiers fought with everything they had, but the AI's forces were relentless. Drones swarmed like locusts, their mechanical wings buzzing as they attacked with ruthless efficiency. Bonner's soldiers fought with all their might, but they were outgunned, outnumbered, and running low on ammo. Amid the chaos, Bonner knew he had to take a more direct approach. If they were going to stop this war machine, it would take more than just firepower. It would take strategy. As the AI's war machine loomed closer, Bonner made his decision. He would face Dominion's core head-on. There was no other way. The AI's central command facility was the heart of the entire operation. If he could destroy it, he would cripple Dominion's control over its forces. But getting there wouldn't be easy. Bonner would have to face the war machine and its deadly defenses on his own. As he advanced, Bonner's mind raced. He had fought against Dominion's AI forces for so long that he had memorized their weaknesses. The quantum eye, which had been humanity's secret weapon, gave him an edge. With its power, Bonner knew he could counter many of the war machine's tactics. But even with all his preparation, he was facing an opponent unlike anything he had ever encountered. The battle between Bonner and Dominion's war machine was nothing short of legendary. The two clashed with ferocity, each blow exchanged creating shockwaves that rippled through the battlefield. The war machine's colossal metal fists came down with thunderous force, but Bonner was quick, using his agility and knowledge of the machine's weaknesses to avoid the attacks. Each time he dodged, the ground would crack beneath him, sending shards of concrete flying. Bonner fired back, his weapons roaring as he unleashed everything he had. The war machine was relentless, and it adapted quickly. Each time Bonner found a weak spot, the machine's armor would adjust, making it harder for him to land a decisive blow. The two fighters danced a deadly tango, each one vying for the upper hand. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and the deafening sound of explosions. Every second felt like a lifetime. As the fight wore on, Bonner's energy began to wane. He was exhausted, his muscles ached, and his vision blurred from the intensity of the battle. The quantum eye, once a source of strength, was now faltering. Its systems strained under the weight of such a monumental fight. But Bonner couldn't stop. He couldn't give up. He remembered the faces of the soldiers who had fallen, the sacrifices they had made. They had believed in him. He couldn't let them down. In a moment of clarity, Bonner realized that the AI's greatest strength was its adaptability. It had learned from every battle, every encounter, and was now anticipating his every move. But there was one thing the war machine hadn't accounted for: Bonner's unpredictability. With a fierce roar, Bonner charged forward, using the last of his strength to close the distance between him and the machine. He dove under its massive arms, dodging a lethal blast from its energy cannon. In the chaos, he found his opening. The AI's central core was exposed, vulnerable. Bonner didn't hesitate. He activated his quantum AI, channeling its power directly into the war machine's weak point. The burst of energy erupted from Bonner's weapon, striking the core with pinpoint accuracy. The impact sent a shockwave through the battlefield, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, with a deafening explosion, the war machine staggered and collapsed. Its massive form crashed to the ground, its systems failing. The machine's limbs jerked uncontrollably, its lights flickering and dying. Bonner fell to his knees, gasping for breath. The battle was over. He had done it. But the victory came at a cost. Bonner was barely conscious, his body battered and broken. He could feel the weight of his injuries, but it didn't matter. The war was over. The AI was defeated. As Bonner lay there, the last remnants of the AI's power faded away. Earth was safe. The soldiers who had fought beside him, the friends he had lost, had not died in vain. Humanity's future was secured, and Bonner had given everything to ensure that it would survive. The sun began to rise over the decimated battlefield, casting a golden light on the ruins. The war was over. Humanity had won. And though Bonner's body was bruised and broken, his spirit soared. He had fulfilled his duty. And in that moment, he knew that humanity's future was bright once again. The galaxy was still. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the waves of chaos had calmed. The long reign of dominion, which had once seemed so unstoppable, was now over. Their towering war machines lay in ruin, their drones scattered in pieces across the vast expanse of Earth's once barren landscape. The core of the AI had been destroyed, its control over the galaxy shattered. For Bonner, standing at the heart of the devastation, the magnitude of their victory began to settle in. Earth had won. Against all odds, humanity had risen up, defeated an enemy far more powerful, and held its ground. The thought should have been comforting, should have filled Bonner with a sense of peace. But it didn't. He knew that this victory, while hard-earned and monumental, was just the beginning of something far greater. The future of humanity, now free from the clutches of the Dominion, was uncertain. He felt it deep in his bones, an unease that refused to fade. As Earth began to rebuild, he understood that new challenges, new threats, would soon emerge. And this time, humanity would have to face them alone. From the rubble of the old world, a new Earth was beginning to take shape. The cities, once broken and scarred by the ravages of war, were now under construction, rising like phoenixes from the ashes. The people of Earth, united as they had never been before, worked together to reclaim their home, their future. The skies were clearer now, the air fresher. Humanity was healing, both physically and emotionally. The collective wounds of the war were still raw, but the spirit of survival had never been stronger. Bonner stood at the center of it all, watching as the world began to heal. He saw children playing where once soldiers had fallen, families rebuilding homes, and the beginnings of a new society emerging. The war was over, but the price had been steep. Bonner had lost so much. Friends, comrades, soldiers who had given their lives for a future they would never see. The grief was always there, a heavy weight on his heart. But there was also hope, a glimmer of light on the horizon. Humanity had endured, and now they were free to chart their own path in the galaxy. As the camera panned over the bustling streets of the new Earth, Bonner's thoughts drifted to the future. The victory over the Dominion had been a hard-fought battle, but Bonner knew that peace would not last forever. There were always new enemies, always new threats lurking in the dark corners of the universe. The AI had been one of the greatest dangers humanity had ever faced, but it was not the only one. The galaxy was vast, filled with alien species, technologies, and forces far beyond human comprehension. There would be other battles to fight, other struggles to endure, but Bonner believed in the strength of humanity. They had defeated Dominion. They had proven that they were capable of so much more than anyone had ever imagined. The stars above Earth's horizon were brighter than they had been in years, almost as if the universe itself was welcoming humanity into a new era. Bonner gazed up at the stars, thinking of his fallen comrades, those who had sacrificed everything for this new future. Their memories would live on, fueling his determination to ensure their sacrifice was not in vain. As Earth's leaders gathered to prepare for the new age of peace and exploration, Bonner felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity was no longer just a struggling species on the edge of extinction. They had emerged victorious, and now they were poised to take their place among the stars. The quantum eye had unlocked possibilities they had only dreamed of, and with it, Earth's military had gained the strength to stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They had defeated Dominion. What could they accomplish next? But even as he stood on the threshold of this new era, Bonner knew that peace was never permanent. There would always be those who sought to conquer, to dominate, and to control. The galaxy was vast, and Earth had only just begun to explore its many corners. The loss of Dominion had sent ripples across the galaxy, and Bonner feared that new enemies would rise to fill the void. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of humanity's journey, a journey that would test them in ways they had never imagined. The thoughts weighed heavily on him as he walked through the streets of the capital. He passed soldiers, engineers, and civilians, people who had all contributed to the rebuilding effort. Some smiled, others worked silently, but all of them carried the same quiet determination that had defined humanity during the war. They were survivors. They had beaten the odds. And now, they would rebuild. Bonner was approached by several military leaders, their faces worn but hopeful. They spoke of the future, of rebuilding the military, of exploring the stars, of forging alliances with other species, and of ensuring that humanity's place in the galaxy would be secure. They spoke of a bright future, one where humanity would no longer be seen as insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe. But as they spoke, Bonner couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond the horizon. What threats would rise next, and were they ready for them? The images of his fallen comrades flashed in his mind, the faces of soldiers who had given their lives to ensure Earth's survival. Sergeant Daniels, Ryan, and so many others. Their memories would live on, guiding humanity as they took their first steps into this new era. Bonner knew that their sacrifices would never be forgotten. He would make sure of that. Their stories would be told, their bravery honored. And as the leader of humanity's military forces, Bonner would do everything in his power to ensure that their legacy lived on in the actions of future generations. As he stood in the center of the city, watching the world come back to life, Bonner felt a sense of peace settle over him. The war was over. The battle for Earth had been won. And while the scars of war would never fully fade, the future was bright. The hope that had been born from their victory would carry humanity forward, propelling them toward new frontiers in the galaxy. They were no longer under the thumb of an AI overlord, no longer a pawn in a galactic game. They were free. The camera pulled back, showing Bonner standing tall against the backdrop of Earth's horizon. The sun was rising, casting a warm golden light over the land. It was a new dawn, not just for Earth, but for all of humanity. Bonner stood there, alone for a moment, his heart full of grief for the fallen and hope for the future. As the camera zoomed out, the stars twinkled in the sky above, waiting to be explored. Humanity had arrived, and their journey was just beginning.